The Mexico GP weekend has just gotten started, and we already have some Red Bull drama coming out of the yapper himself, Helmut Marko. Kind of interesting, though. We're going to talk about what Helmut Marko had to say about the current Red Bull driver situation, who might be a replacement coming down the line, and then who's going to fill those RB seats and potentially replace Checo Perez. Because obviously, coming into this weekend, there have been some rumors that this could be Perez's last race, and this could be his retirement announcement at his home race this weekend, and that they might replace him next year, even though they had said they re-signed him for next year. So let's get into the first article here from the yapper himself. Oscar Piastri Red Bull bombshell dropped by Marko as shock move tease. So, former Red Bull driver Mark Webber, who is also Oscar Piastri's manager, is intensively chasing negotiations with the team about signing his client, McLaren's Oscar Piastri. So, obviously, if you know the history of Mark Webber with Red Bull, he was kind of their backup not backup driver, but their number two driver to Sebastian Vettel at the time. He obviously took that very personal and made it a point to for Oscar to have it be known that he's never going to be referred to as a number two driver, and that's why we haven't seen that so far with McLaren. I think this probably comes maybe as a result of the team orders last weekend at the USGP, where Lando Norris got himself a 5-second penalty for an illegal overtake. And if Oscar Piastri at the time on the last lap of the race, when the penalty was announced, was only about 4 seconds behind Lando, and the team had to ask him to back off over a second on just one lap so that he could not place ahead of Lando and Lando to be closer to Max in the points and in the championship. So that is team orders, absolutely, because if Oscar just continued his race as normal as he was going about his way, he would have ended up placing ahead of Lando last race. So that's not the only team orders this year, obviously, and I think that probably has a bit of a role here to play into why maybe Mark Webber's pushing for Oscar to go to somewhere like Red Bull. But here's the thing. Are we talking about Sergio, like, are we talking about Checo's replacement or Verstappen's replacement? Because down here it says, and this is Ralph Schumacher by the way. So this isn't like Helmut Marko or anybody else, but he says furthermore, Red Bull cannot rely on Verstappen still being in the team in 2026. They have to be prepared for that. Piastri would be the ideal replacement. I am therefore very curious to see how McLaren will approach the Piastri issue in the future. Here's what I think. I think McLaren's going to fumble it. That's what I think. Maybe this opens up a spot for Sainz to get out of Williams if Piastri leaves. But here's the thing. So ideally, I guess for Max at this point, I don't think he's going to want to be with Red Bull come 2026. And as we can see here, it says Perez's future is uncertain with Red Bull. F1 Insider claims that the team is eyeing Piastri to be Max Verstappen's teammate or replacement in 2026. So I guess it could be either. But Verstappen has been linked with both Mercedes and Aston Martin. Obviously, Mercedes, Toto Wolff's been fucking on his knees waiting for Max for years now. That spot's obviously going to open up with Hamilton gone, and they're going to put Kimi Antonelli in there. So I don't really like the idea of them promoting Antonelli to then a year later be like, oh, sorry, get the fuck out of here, bitch. Max is ready now. I don't really like that. And obviously, Aston Martin's in play now because of Adrian Newey, who Red Bull lost along with most of their senior staff over the course of the year. He's going to Aston Martin. Is probably going to make that an absolute rocket ship and likely a title contender because at this point right now, Newey is not actively or even in the past 10 races been working on any car. So maybe that's why we've seen such a mix-up in the order and not one dominant team. I mean, maybe not every single time his car is a dominant car, but it's kind of a pretty good rule to follow that Newey's car is going to be one of the consistently best. So maybe that has a little bit to do with that. But let's move on. So let's put it this way. Mark Webber is intensively seeking conversations, Marko claimed to F1 Insider on that rumor. So obviously Webber already has ties with Red Bull. He's interested in continuing that relationship and putting Oscar in a position to be on a winning team where he doesn't have to be held back by team orders and being the number two driver. I'm going to be honest. Piastri has at some points looked like he could be the number one driver over Norris, but I think as a whole over the course of the season, it would be unfair to say that he's outperformed Norris at all. Obviously, the stats say that, but I just think in his consistency, in his pace, in his qualifying pace, Lando has been consistently better over the course of the season, and rightfully so. I mean, Lando has quite a bit more experience. I mean, a couple years more than Oscar Piastri, who's just in his second year and already quite impressive. So I think that's the reason this is starting to come up now. It's a whole lot of different things. It's Perez possibly being gone. It's this whole situation with RB with Lawson and Yuki, and now we have Colapinto in the mix, who he's not going to have a seat next year, but he probably deserves one. So let's move on to that. So the other article, Red Bull finds solution for Sergio Perez replacement. Obviously, you can see the picture here is Franco Colapinto. Um, yeah, I mean, it's probably going to be Lawson or somebody like Colapinto. This is pretty much just talking about how Lawson's kind of been in the running, been the reserve driver. They may have also found a solution to the vacancy that a departing Lawson might create at VCARB, as Franco Colapinto is doing a great job for Williams and has no drive in 2025. So they're saying that because Lawson might be leaving VCARB and going to replace Perez, that there's going to be an opening now at VCARB. I'd love to see Colapinto there. One, because he's been doing quite well this season and has been pretty impressive, and two, because having to see Yuki compete with somebody younger and fresher on the scene with him is going to be really interesting to watch. You know, he's going to be raging and probably doing a lot of what he did last week and crashing as a result of trying to keep up to his teammate who was outperforming when he shouldn't be in Liam Lawson, going from 19th to 9th, which again, I didn't talk about enough. I don't think anybody talks about that enough, but 19th to 9th on your first race, as you can see here, as Yuki starts in the middle and struggles to do anything, not a good look, man. Not a good look when you're not in the race shape, as like physically, mentally you haven't been in the race recently. That says a lot about both Lawson and Yuki. So another article: Red Bull face a tough decision, a tough choice: Perez, Lawson, or perhaps Colapinto. Again, this is all kind of assuming that Perez is out at the end of the year, but we've seen rumors of that. We've obviously had rumors that Perez could be out before or after this Mexico GP. We thought over the break around Spa that he was going to be out coming back when Ricardo got booted. We thought that Ricardo was going to be the one getting promoted, as we see him in the plane with Max Verstappen leaving the race, and they're all smiles and this and that. And then it comes out that the FIA and Liberty Media blocked Perez being dropped because of his sponsors and his cartel money. But that was already a big factor of this season. Perez obviously been absolute shit this season, and he says here Perez believes the Mexico City Grand Prix result could make a massive change to his F1 2024 season, which he deemed terrible. Yeah, definitely. I know I've had a terrible season, a very difficult one. He told media, including Planet F1. It started really well, but yeah, it's been really, really difficult. Only for you, little bro. Obviously, Max has struggled quite a bit with the car because it hasn't been as dominant as it was last year, and they've had to work through a lot of growing pains with these upgrades and whatnot. But Perez is still like not even close, bro. Like I don't even I don't know how else to put this, but you're not like it's just not even close in comparison. Like it's one of the most lopsided like teammate matchups at this point, and it's just getting worse. So I think this kind of comes from a place in saying that it could be a massive change. He's trying to give himself some of that last motivation to get through this and not just go into this assuming that he's going to be canned afterwards. But I think he should. I think he should have been out earlier in the season, but I don't think he will because of that sweet sweet money, that sweet sweet Mexican money from that market that they don't have from anybody else. And it's really sad if that's the only reason that he stays around. It'd be like, oh, well, it's kind of like Guan Yu Zhou too. It's kind of the same thing, right? But it's just like having somebody just it's very similar in the UFC. If anybody else watches the UFC, obviously I do those videos on this channel as well, but it's very similar to the UFC where they'll go to specific regions just for one fighter and they'll baby them and give them easier matchups to maintain that region's support. I think the same thing's happening here with Perez. The only reason he's still around is because he's from Mexico, brings in that market, sells merch, and has big sponsorships. We're just going to be straight up honest. That's the only reason he still has his place on the grid. Just like the only reason Stroll has a place on the grid is because his daddy pays for it. So these things do exist in F1. It kind of makes the whole experience worse because the reason me personally I love F1 is because it's the pinnacle of racing. It's supposed to be the best of the best, all 20. There's only 20 spots, man. That's such a limited amount of spots considering the thousands, if not like a million international drivers that would love to be on that grid. And for someone to just be there either because of nepotism or because they're from a certain country and get a bunch of cartel money, it just kind of ruins it, kind of dilutes the sport a little bit. It kind of ruins it watching it, just knowing that some people just don't deserve to be there instead of knowing that everybody on that grid is the absolute best at least for before that season when they were signed. You know what I mean? So that's it today. Let's go real quick to Instagram. I want to bring this back to because we did have Max Verstappen just a couple of weeks ago. It was 5 weeks ago. This post saying that he sees Piastri as a number one driver and not a number two. The exact quote is, "If you look at it from Oscar's point of view, he's closer to Lando than Lando is to me." Boom, roasted. Facts. But they have to deal with that. It's not my problem. Oscar came in as a number one driver. Actually, they both are. I don't think you can label Oscar as a number two driver. And at this point, I thought he just said this to kind of throw some gas on the fire, but he's kind of right. Again, Lando has outperformed Oscar this season to this point on a consistency basis, but I think Oscar's trajectory is looking a lot better. I feel like Oscar has a little bit more of that instinct that if he was in the position, maybe could see him overtake Max Verstappen and not have penalties every time and not have to have contact or do all this other shit to try to get past and still not really be successful. I mean, the only time we've seen Lando legitimately pass Max is when he's like already way faster on a straightaway and there's no chance really to defend. So the only problem I have with this is like if it's Max and Oscar, then you're gonna have the same situation as when it was Oscar and Lando, right? It's just another number one driver that you have to compete with and not want to have team orders to be number two. And we know damn well Max ain't fucking letting him through or giving up this position or doing this or that for him. We've seen that with Checo, and rightfully so because he doesn't fucking deserve it. I get in the last couple of years he's been a good teammate, yada yada yada. I don't give a fuck. He don't deserve shit. Um, and I appreciate the mentality of like I'm not giving you shit, you have to go earn it. I appreciate that, especially again these are just certain things that you need to be a champion, and certain people don't have it. I think Oscar Piastri is one of those people that does have it. So I really like this for Red Bull. I don't think that Max is going to be there in 2026 for it to even be an issue. I do think he's going to leave Red Bull. Unfortunately, I do think that, but he has said that he wants to stay there as long as possible. He's obviously only been there his entire career. He said he didn't want to be somebody that jumps around to 4 or 5 teams towards the end of their career. So I wouldn't be surprised if he stayed there, but I think the reason it kind of works out with Perez right now is because he doesn't have to worry about the motherfucker, bro. He don't have to worry about him coming up and having to give team orders or having to battle with him. Dude, he ain't even close. He had to battle with a couple times, 2022, 2023, maybe 2021. But I don't know if they want that. I don't know if they need that in their garage, man, having to deal with a two number one drivers. Maybe that's too much for them. But now with not having a dominant car, not having Adrian Newey there in the future, they're not going to be able to coast off of just having the best car by a landslide and be able to just have Max score enough points to win both the drivers and constructors championships, which is just ridiculous. But that's essentially what he did with Perez because Perez wasn't doing shit anyway. So I don't know. I'm just yapping. Let me know what you guys think. It'd be interesting. It'd also be interesting if Colapinto does go to McLaren if Oscar goes. Obviously, that would be at least 2 years away, so I don't know where Colapinto would be in the meantime. And who knows? Maybe by 2026, we have a whole handful of other drivers that are just like Colapinto that could get that spot. So I'd love to see him get a drive for next year. I'd love to see Perez the fuck out of here. Get out, bitch. Lawson can take his spot if he has a good rest of the season. I'd love to see that. And then Colapinto to VCARB, and then maybe to another good team like McLaren when there's a spot open if he keeps proving himself, you know what I mean? There's just like you see the trajectory of some of these guys, a lot of young guys, and you can kind of see how they're going in their careers. And someone like Colapinto and someone like Lawson that could just jump in the car and instantly perform to sometimes better than their teammates that have been there for months, weeks, years, season after season, like Alex Albon, and who's placing behind Colapinto now just after a couple races. Bro went from having his teammate crash every race to fucking losing to the guy now. So obviously the driver market's very dynamic. I like these moves. I think it would be nice if Oscar went to Red Bull as their number one driver and maybe they had somebody else like a Lawson there with him, something like that maybe. I don't know that it would really work out with Max and Oscar. That'd definitely be a deadly fucking combo. But two number one drivers that want to prove they're number one driver. And I mean, Max doesn't have to prove it, but you know what I mean. Let me know what you think. Like the video if you like the video, subscribe. I'll be back with more for this race this weekend. I just wanted to talk about this because this is the main thing that came out today, and there's definitely some truth to it. There's definitely some possibility to it, but quite a few things have to happen for all this to go down. And the first domino that has to fall is Perez getting the fuck out. So, hey, maybe we'll have such a good weekend. We'll hear the announcement this weekend and he can fuck off into the distance. Maybe we can put somebody else in the car for the rest of the season. I don't think they're going to do that, but I don't know. Let me know what you think. I'll be back. Peace.